So let's not try that.
Okay, welcome everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, depending on your time zone. First of all, congratulations on your renewal, Matthias, another year in MVP program.
Thanks.
I'm lucky too. Good to be here. Good to be with friends. Okay, I will not. I will cut it very short because last week we had a very theory-based, theory-heavy demo about Git branching in Fabric and Power BI. This week we go full throttle and we'll put everything into action. Demo day today.
Yes.
Matthias, over to you.
Fantastic. Very good. Thanks very much. Just confirm you can hear me okay and you can see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Awesome. Very good. Cool. So yeah, this is a continuation from last week where I tried to introduce some concepts around branching in the context of Fabric and Power BI. Not planning to do any slides today. In fact, everything is going to be demos. Apart from this one, just let me introduce myself. Anyone who was not around last week, Matthias Thierbach. I just had my MVP renewal come through, like many other people. So I'm glad I didn't have to remove the logo from this page. Yeah, so data platform MVP around Power BI and Fabric, and particularly interested and working on all things DevOps. DevOps, CI/CD, and developer workflows is more than a passion topic for me. It's what I spent a lot of my time and energy on. And I just want to share a few things around that today. So as I said before, let's not do slides. Instead, let's go demo. So sorry, let me just remove that. So I hope you can still see my screen okay. I've prepared a project that sits in GitHub. It's a, let's say, medium complex Fabric project. And I want to show one specific workflow that I'm personally quite happy with, and that I think would work quite well for teams trying to collaborate on Fabric solutions. So the workflow diagram for which I already shared last week, but again, this is all about actually showing the stuff in action and also explaining so some of the thinking behind it a little bit. Okay, so let's have a look at this diagram here. The idea is to have a relatively simple setup in terms of branching. So that's the starting point. And we can actually see that we effectively only have two main branches, main and develop, and then we have so-called feature branches that go alongside them. Main and develop are basically permanent and also protected branches, so they always remain. Feature branches are short-lived. They only exist for as long as a single developer is working on a single particular feature. Then those branches get merged into develop and ultimately main, and ultimately that particular feature branch disappears. So that's the first thing in terms of branching. So it's meant to be very simple, actually. Second thing, if we look at environments, we actually have 5 of them. So let me start on the right. Production, obviously, don't really have to explain much about that. This particular workflow defines the production based on explicit version numbers set on the main branch. So in Git, those are called tags. Tags can contain any kind of string, but by convention, usually tags would contain a version number. In CI systems like GitHub, for instance, that's then called a release and actually has really nice UI features around it. We're going to see that in a demo in a bit. And so the idea here is to say what's in main is actually not yet production. For something to become production, I need to put an explicit tag on my project, on my repository, which gives me a lot of control with respect to when something advances to production. And most importantly, because I would have given it an explicit version number, sorry, I just lost my mouse there. Because I would have given it an explicit version number, things like rollback to previous versions are pretty straightforward, as well as being able to actually communicate which version of our system we're looking at. So anything that gets merged into main is basically a candidate for production. It will become production once a tag is placed on it. And so we're saying that merging into main means we are populating our test or our UAT environment. So that allows us to bring our stakeholders, our approvers, our reviewers on board, have them review what's a candidate for production, and hopefully ultimately sign off. So how do we actually make changes in the system? So this is where the feature branch workflow comes in. So let's just move to the left here. As I said before, anytime a developer is starting a piece of work, we basically encapsulate that as a feature. That developer will create a feature branch, and we've got some automation set up here so that a corresponding feature environment will actually be provisioned automatically. So this is triggered by creation of the feature branch, and this particular environment will also be deprovisioned or removed automatically as soon as the corresponding branch is deleted. Particularly in a system like Fabric, this is extremely important because a lot of development can only be done in an actual environment inside Fabric or inside Power BI. So, we need the corresponding workspaces because a lot of the items only give us a UI to actually make changes. So once the developer working on a specific feature is happy for this to be reviewed, they create a PR into the develop branch. And again, for review purposes and also for testing purposes, this particular PR will automatically have a corresponding environment in place, again, created through automation, which lets us see any changes that developer would have done on their respective feature branch actually deployed into a real-world environment. Generally, once a PR is in place, there is going to be a bit of back and forth in terms of further changes coming in here. So each time that PR has an update, the corresponding environment is also updated. And ultimately, we're going to have the changes from that feature branch merged into develop, where the entire team can basically look at their aggregated changes all joined together in one environment. So this particular diagram is slightly misleading in the sense that we actually have one development environment, we've got one test environment, and we've got one production environment, but we've got N PR environments and N feature environments. So do keep that in mind. This is not necessarily what the diagram shows, but because depending on your team size, you will have any number of parallel feature development branches in flow. We need this development environment here in order to actually see them all work together in an integrated fashion. All right, so let's have a look at this particular project in GitHub. I must have closed the window I had prepared earlier. So here we go. All right, so here we go. So that's the project. Same thing. I've got, yeah, I should probably have a look at the chat here. Okay, so that's the project. And we can see over here with some lovely green ticks that various deployments have already happened. And specifically, I can also see, and I can filter those deployments by environment. So if I only want to see what's gone into production, I can use this very neat GitHub feature where I just click on production. And I can also see here a direct link into the corresponding workspace. So if I just sign in here, let's have a look at this. So we have a report linked to a semantic model. Semantic model is linked to a lakehouse. The lakehouse is populated by a data pipeline that brings in external data into a staging area and by a notebook which converts those external files into Delta tables. So again, not super complex, but certainly quite a few things that have to work in conjunction here. So if we have a look at this report, here we go. We've got a bit of sales, nicely interactive. Again, this is all direct lake, so can see Fabric performance in direct lake mode very nicely, and then same thing here. So that's what it looks like in terms of the project. Looking at this in terms of lineage view, there we go. We can see report, semantic model, link to the lakehouse. The notebook is also linked to the lakehouse. And then we've got the data pipeline here. Unfortunately, the lineage view is not able to show the lineage here because I'm using parameters. So this is just a limitation of Fabric. It's actually linked. It's just not able to show us that it is. let's have a look at this project from a source code point of view. So this Fabric subfolder here basically contains what you would know from a Fabric Git integration. So if we look at those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 subfolders here, this is pretty much the exact same stuff you get from Git integration, where by convention we have a subfolder with the item name, dot, and the item type. So the report called sales is contained inside my sales report subfolder, and so on and so forth. Which also means what is contained in this particular subfolder is actually something you would be able to get exactly in the same way by using Git integration with Azure DevOps or GitHub. I'm not using Git integration in this example, but that would work just as well. Let's have a look here. So this is, yeah, here we go. So this is a environment table, which generally I like to create sort of for my own visibility, even whenever thinking about what should be the CI/CD DevOps setup for any given new project. So we can see our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 environments here. We can also see what is the source for that respective environment. And so source is tag, branch, or PR. I've explained that previously. I've put a dedicated column here to say what's the deployment trigger. So again, just to repeat things, a tag on main basically triggers a production deployment, a push into main triggers a test deployment, push into develop a development deployment. If a PR is created that targets develop, a temporary PR environment is created. Every time the source branch for that PR is updated, the respective environment is also updated. The final environment is a little different. So basically, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first 4 environments are all Git sourced. They will not ever have any manual interaction. They will not have anyone making any changes to the environment directly. In fact, they will not even have any direct commits into the corresponding branches. It's only the 5th environment, the feature environment, that actually has incoming changes from a developer. Everything further up is being moved along using PRs and merges. Now, as I said before, in Fabric specifically, we are sometimes required for quite a large number of item types to make changes directly in the Fabric UI, which is why there's no automation here to update the feature branch. In fact, to update the feature environment. The feature environment is only created, and then any development is actually expected to be happening inside the environment. Ultimately, the developer will sync their changes back into the branch, and from there, we're then basically moving from the feature branch to develop and main. So that's the idea here. Let's see what that looks like in action. So I'm not gonna do hugely complicated changes here. in the interest of not wanting to break any demos, but what I'm going to do some trivial changes, basically, just to make the point. So if I go here and create a new branch, I can do it off main or off develop. In this particular case, there is not much of a difference, but sometimes your development branch might be more advanced than where main is at, and you may want to pick develop at that point. So let's call this semantic model folders. Okay. Awesome. Cool. So I've got a new branch in place. And if I jump to actions, I can actually see that something is happening now. So triggered by the creation of this particular branch, I now have a CI/CD workflow running. And that one, as we can see, targets the feature environment. We can have a look here. That will take a couple of minutes because whenever a new environment is created from scratch, the automation will actually run all the data load scripts. So in this particular case, it will run the pipeline, it will run the notebook, and it will trigger a semantic model refresh, ensuring that basically the environment is populated with data, and it works end to end. That's one of the big differences we've got compared to using Fabric Git integration, for instance, where you don't get any of that, right? You just get metadata sync, and then you're basically left with empty containers where you have to perform some sort of manual load in order to be able to use a report, for instance. Because of that, it's going to take a little longer now, but we can also see a live update here. So basically all the metadata syncing has already completed. We've got we've had a new workspace created with this particular name. It's been assigned to our project capacity, and then we've had a lakehouse, pipeline, notebook, semantic model, and report created. And now we're waiting for 3 jobs to complete. The first one is the data pipeline. Second one is the notebook. And then the third one will be semantic model. Semantic model refresh is quite trivial here because it's direct lake. So it will just take a second or so, but it's still absolutely vital to trigger it at least once, because the direct lake connection otherwise won't know that the underlying data source actually has been populated. So whilst we're waiting here, I'm going to have a look at the chat.
Actually, there was a question from, let me find it, from Jack while we wait for that thing to finish. Can't we just have a pre-merge build or pre-trigger instead of pre-branch? That was the question from Jake.
Can we have a pre-merge build or a PR trigger instead of the PR branch? There is no PR branch.
The image was misleading.
Sorry? The image was misleading. Yes, I'm sorry. Okay, so let's have a look at the image. Yeah, so this is not meant to be a branch. This is meant to be the PR. Yes. If that was the reason for the question, then I think we've resolved it, right? So the whole point is that there are only 3 types of branches: main and develop as permanent branches, and then any number of short-lived feature branches, depending on how much parallel work you've got underway. Make sense? All right. So in the meantime, this is also completed. So if we go to summary, we can see everything is green, which makes me happy. And also for convenience, we've got a hyperlink here, which again allows us to actually go straight into the newly created feature environment. Now, I need to tell you in advance that this is going to fail first time round. But this is a Fabric problem. This is not my problem. So the reason is that obviously I'm logging in with my personal user account, which is not the one that's actually created the workspace. So my user account is authorized on that workspace, but only through a group membership. And Fabric is not smart enough to figure that out. So first time, I click on the link, it tells me I don't have access. Second time I click on the link, I do have access. So again, this is Fabric being Fabric. Sorry about that. But yeah, if I had run the pipeline as myself under my own identity, I wouldn't have had that, because obviously I would have been my user account would have been the owner. But here, because Fabric basically needs to do a lookup of which indirect permissions I may have through my group memberships, it's behaving like that. But nonetheless, if I now go into my report, I told you, there we go. So we actually have a fully working, very nice report here. Again, if you've worked with Fabric Git integration, you've created feature branches before, this is quite far from what you've experienced there, because you would have had to do quite a lot of manual intervention. All right, so what else do we have here? So if I now go back to deployments, I can see, here we go, 6 minutes ago. So that's the one which was just created. This is another way, using the GitHub UI to actually show me what's been deployed to this particular environment, how do I get there, and what were the underlying CI/CD jobs. Just to explain the naming convention here, because feature environment NPRs are basically owned by a developer, I've decided to suffix the feature environments with the username. Now, sadly, because I'm doing the demo on my own, you won't ever see anything that doesn't have my username here. But hopefully, you can imagine if a whole team shared the same workflow, you would basically have a dedicated feature environment for every one of your developers, and you would be able to click into their respective actions. And the same applies to all PRs triggered by that respective developer. All right. So, yeah, so there we go. So same hyperlink here is just another way to basically have a neat, quick shortcut directly into the target environment. The other thing you're going to see, I'm using a naming convention here, where basically this one is the production workspace, and then everything else is being derived from it by effectively appending some suffixes to the workspace name, which also means whenever you're inside the Fabric UI and you see any workspace that happens to contain forward slashes, you already know that by convention, this is a non-production workspace. And hopefully you can then figure out what the origin is for that one. Okay, so let me make a few changes here. So if I go to the semantic model, obviously we've got the web editor now, but I want to show you a few avenues how you can make changes. So if I grab the connection string and on my machine, go into Tabular Editor and open this particular model in Tabular Editor from my very own feature environment. Here we go. You know, I can use all the greatness of Tabular Editor without even having to download or export anything. So I decided to just do something very trivial here. I've got a sales table here, which happens to have 2 measures, and I just want to be a good team player and put them into a display folder. There we go. So yeah, apologies for the lame demo, but hopefully you understand this is not the point. So clicking the save button here, because this has got a live connection, will basically push it straight into my environment. And if I now go into the web editor, we're going to see that here we go. That's my that is my my new folder. There we go. So how do I get this back into Git? As I said before, theoretically you could have set up Git integration for this, but I've got a slightly different approach here. Because I already have a local clone of this project, I'm just gonna, no, I don't have the, I'm just gonna check out my branch. Here we go, switch to branch. Okay. Right. So I've got my my feature branch checked out now, and I'm going to use my own tooling, which is this little tool, which basically allows me to export a Fabric workspace using Git integration format into any arbitrary folder. So if I basically grab the workspace name, so I can just copy paste this. Here we go. Copy. And then say, copy this into the Fabric subfolder, and I'm gonna just say format payload as well. It's gonna authenticate with my user. I'm using a local authentication token cache here, which is why it didn't actually prompt me. So I connected previously, so it makes it much more straightforward. And now I've basically brought down all item definitions into this particular folder. So let's have a look what that looks like in here. So there is some slight annoyance at this point because I seem to have an awful lot of changes that don't appear to have anything to do with what I've just done. So that's definitely something I'm aware of. There are two types of misleading changes here, and let me just walk you through that. So one is because each item, when it gets deployed into a given environment, will have its item definition dynamically updated in order to account for parameters for that particular environment. And so this is something we see right now, right? So here we can see that this particular notebook, for instance, would have had its default lakehouse settings changed in order to account for my feature environment. The same applies to my data pipeline, where if I go down here at the end, we can see where I've got parameters defined as part of the JSON payload. For this particular pipeline, they would have changed. Now, in terms of the tooling I'm using here, we're working on addressing those kinds of changes and basically detecting them and ignoring them on the fly, so that in a future release they won't even show up. But for the time being, we've got that here. The other thing is, again, something very annoying. This is linked to PPIR, so the new format for reports. So for some reason, every so often you get some weird rounding changes with respect to visuals and pages in reports. And then, I mean, that also happens with desktop. It doesn't just happen when you download report definitions from the service. And then you basically have some apparent changes in your report definition when you actually didn't change anything. So again, this is really annoying. But as I said, we're working on improving the tooling to detect those kinds of insignificant changes and completely ignore them when you do an export. So for now, I'm going to ignore them. I'm going to ignore them. I'm going to ignore them manually. Here we go. So this is actually what I'm looking for. As you can see, sales table, 2 measures, they've had the display folder added. So I'm just going to do a selective commit now with only this particular file. Everything else I can ignore. And again, the goal is that in the future, those 30 changes that currently come through will not even be visible to you, because they're just going to have been covered and captured by the tool. So here we go. If I now say semantic model added measures display folder, going to be a good corporate citizen here and do a meaningful commit message. There we go. And then just to make the point, one thing that really bugs me with the report setup, as you can see, whenever I go to the report, it defaults to the second page rather than the first one. Now, this is something which I can actually change in the code quite easily. So I'm just going to do that. All I need to do is to go into report definition pages and pages.json. And here I can see I've got my first page and my second page, and I can just copy this particular ID and paste it in here as my active page name. And if I then go here and commit that, there we go. Just to make the case that provided you know what you're doing, you can actually make changes in VS Code, in the underlying code, without, having to go into Power BI Desktop or so. So switched back landing page. There we go. Cool. So now I can push this. There we go. Cool. So those two changes should now be up in GitHub. And if I go here, there we go. GitHub is very kind to actually tell me, first of all, I've had changes here. Secondly, to offer me this very convenient pull request button, which is what I wanted to do in any case. Okay, semantic model folders and report landing page, create pull request. All right, so here we go. Now the second piece of magic kicks in. As I explained before, pull request from a workflow point of view is obviously something that is really vital in terms of collaboration and approvals and reviews, which is why me having created this pull request now automatically triggers a deployment that will actually create a new ephemeral environment specifically for this pull request. So if we go here, we're gonna, oopsie, nope. If we go here, we're gonna see this in action. There we go. So this time it's a PR deployment rather than a feature deployment. The first time around, this is going to take a little longer again because, as I said before, whenever a new workspace is created from scratch, it's going to run all the jobs to populate data, but any subsequent changes on that PR will be very quick because they will only trigger a metadata deployment. So whilst we're waiting for this, I can catch up with the chat here.
Do you think if making this report publicly available help us understand the procedure?
Yeah, that's the idea. There's that's the whole that's the plan. There's nothing to hide in here. In fact, I can do this right now whilst we're waiting.
Gina has a question. In the meantime, maybe we can answer. When you are referring to the tool that does the export from the workspace, is that part of PBI tools?
1 second. I'm in the danger zone right now. So here we go. So this should now be public. It's not part of PBI tools. It's part of an entire new tool which I've been working on for quite a while now. That's currently in private preview, and yeah. So we're working with a few private preview customers, making sure the tool is fit for purpose and is as useful as it can be. So if any one of you is keen to get involved, contact me directly and we can have a chat around it. It's meant to go into public preview over the summer, but for the time being, it's private preview only, particularly because, as you've seen before, some of the tooling isn't quite as nice and complete as I'd like it to be. So at this point, it makes a lot more sense for there to be a bit more hand-holding in terms of implementing it and providing guidance around it. Okay, cool. So we've got this, and we can also see 3 minutes ago this completed, and I can do the same double hop now. So first time round is going to tell me I don't have access. Second time round, I do suddenly have access. I hope someone from Microsoft sees that and does something about it. Here we go. Let's go into my report now, where we should expect to actually see the sales overview page. There we go. Awesome. So that's that. And if I go into my semantic model designer, I should also see that obviously I still have my display folder. So that's all come through. Very nice. So let me just complete the flow here. So obviously we have a open PR. It's all green here, so we haven't had any failed deployments, or obviously, you could incorporate any type of any kind of testing into this flow as well. And let me merge this. And what that will do, it will merge this into the develop branch, which yet again is well, two things happen. So first of all, the PR environment is being destroyed because the PR is merged and closed, so it's no longer relevant and no longer needed. And we want to make sure we're cleaning up after ourselves here, rather than leaving all these workspaces flying around. Secondly, because that PR merged into develop, and develop is linked to yet another one of our environments, it's actually triggered a deployment into develop. So we should be able to see this here. So there we go. This one only took 35 seconds. Why? Because it didn't run any of the jobs. It only did a metadata deployment. This one here, pull request, and right, and this one here only took 13 seconds, because have a look what this is. This is the pull request closed. So all this one does is to actually delete a workspace rather than create one. So we can see here this executed the destroy job rather than the deploy job. And if we go into the details for it, we can see it actually deleted this corresponding workspace, which means if I go here, so there we go. This is yet another example for the naming convention. So we can see very clearly this is from a PR, and it happens to be PR number 6. If I do a refresh, it's going to tell me, oops, this one does no longer exist because it's just been removed. Second thing, I no longer need my feature branch either. So if I delete that, here we go, and look into my actions, I can see that this one is now being triggered, and that one does a destroy feature, which again should just take a few seconds and actually removes the corresponding workspace. So there we go. So we're cleaning up after ourselves, but without having to think about it. It just happens automatically. And then last but not least, GitHub very kindly tells me that develop is now ahead of main, so I can create yet another PR, and I could maybe call this the 1.1 release candidate, or whatever I want to call it. Now, this PR does not do anything in terms of deployment. That's not necessary, because we've already seen the underlying changes in action in the in development. So I'm only going to trigger something here once this particular PR is merged. And now I'm going to see this one going into UAT. By the way, there is no delete branch button here because obviously this is going from develop into main, and develop and main are both protected branches. They are not meant to ever be removed. They're not meant to be directly committed and pushed to. And so because they're protected, I don't even have the opportunity to somehow delete here. So here we go. Yeah, it's going to be quite repetitive now in terms of what we see. So obviously, because I've pushed into main, I'm now actually getting an automated UAT deployment. And again, this is already done because it only updated a workspace rather than actually having to run various jobs in it. So let me wrap up here in terms of what we've looked at. Actually, the one thing I haven't done yet, let me go full circle because I talked about it. So what I can do now is I can create a new release. Let's call this 1.1, and that one will give us a production deployment. We can see that here. So the source for it is my tag, which also gives us a version number. And this is now going into production, which means if I go to my production environment over here, I can actually see this is only the second time that a deployment is running. It was 1.0 from pull request 5 previously, and now it's 1.1 from pull request 7. There we go. Cool. Let's see where we're at in terms of comments and questions.
Okay, Fernando, Jay, could you please unmute yourself and ask your question directly? By the way, you have 5 minutes to leave.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I do need to leave on time today. So,
well, just
which is also why I was trying to wrap up.
If you could explain the Git integration, what's the difference between the process you showed today?
Okay, so Git integration obviously has a number of features. So one is you get branching and declaration of feature branch workspaces as part of Git integration. That one has the well understood and known limitation that it's a metadata sync only, and it does not perform any data loads, nor, as far as I'm aware, does it perform any parameterization today, which is what the process I've demoed overcomes and basically has alternative solutions for. Secondly, Git integration only works with 2 CI systems, Azure DevOps and GitHub, and leaves anyone who works with any other system out. So again, this solution addresses that and helps people who work with GitLab or Bitbucket, for instance. Thirdly, the issue we looked at previously where if you parameterize your item definitions, which is obviously necessary if you go from one environment to another, and you use very blunt Git integration, you get what we've seen here. I made one single change and I ended up with 30 files changed, which had nothing to do with actually what I was working on, right? So this is something which Git integration is not going to be able to address. And then the final one, in terms of security, the GitHub connection with Git integration today only works with personal access tokens, which is highly problematic from a security point of view.
Right.
Personal access tokens should really not be used in sort of security sensitive context. So yeah, those are a few reasons why I wouldn't necessarily work with Git integration. Jake? Or if there's a follow-up from Fernando, that's also awesome. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate the hashtag.
Mine's in relation to kind of ClickUps that you have to do in different systems. So Azure DevOps, there's quite a few. Like if you want to do pre-merge builds, you have to set up a branch policy. Does that bring any problems for Navigator and this solution that you've got now in terms of not being able to build that into any YAML?
Oh, that's a good point, actually. Something I haven't spoken about. Sorry. So the well, I mean, anyone who's looked at the project would have seen. So the definition both of the underlying workflow as well as the logic between different environments, that's all YAML based. So it basically sits in those two files here. There's a workflow template which defines which branches and environments we're using. And then there's this DevOps YAML template which defines variables and effectively parameterizes our items. Jake, I didn't quite catch. Can you try to rephrase what you were trying to say?
Don't worry about it. You need to run off to your meeting.
Okay. Yeah, so the idea is to aim to completely abstract away from the specifics of individual CI systems and basically not let you worry about that and basically do all the plumbing necessary on your behalf. So if we're having a look at this GitHub workflows folder, the idea is that all the underlying GitHub-specific YAML definitions are fully auto-generated for you based on well-defined templates, and you don't have to worry about them. You just worry about basically defining the descriptive shape of your project and your workflow and everything else is auto-generated. So that's the idea here. So we're looking at sort of a GitHub flavor here, but we would, if we were targeting Azure DevOps, Bitbucket or GitHub or any other system, we would get whatever those systems required in terms of the CI/CD YAML workflow files.
My point
It's already.
Sorry, the Azure DevOps doesn't have a PR trigger. You have to do it with pre-merge build. Like, frees up that bit.
Yeah, so I'm personally not a great fan of Azure DevOps, to be honest. But there may well be a few sort of workarounds necessary for individual systems where they have some limitations. But hopefully that can be kept quite transparent. Awesome. Cool. So the repo is public. please do get in touch if you're interested in joining the private preview. This is something which I've been investing a lot of time and effort and thinking into, as you probably can imagine. So very keen to make this as versatile and applicable as possible. But at this point, that I would very much appreciate sort of direct interactions with potential users. Follow me on social media, LinkedIn specifically, to get some more updates in the near future.
Thanks a lot, Matthias. That was a hell of a session. Maybe we should arrange another one later on about this again. Okay, I think you should leave. We don't want you to miss your bus or train.
Very
It's
good,
already
fantastic.
6.
Just wanted to show that my production deployment for the 1.1 release is also green now. So nothing unexpected has happened, which is great. Doesn't happen a lot when it comes to live demos. Awesome, very good. My apologies. I am going to have to leave now. And yeah, thanks for joining and for great questions as well.
Thanks a lot, Matthias. See you later.